Hello everyone and welcome back to the Galapagos campaign. Today we continue the saga of the nation of Odontos and their defense of the Galapagos Islands against the aggression of the Placatans. Today we're going to do a very quick little episode where we roll some dice to determine exactly how the opening blow of this campaign is going to fall. Now, the Placatans are going to kick off this campaign with an air raid on the island base here. This is about 900 nautical miles from their base. And in the center of the Galapagos Islands is an island called Isla Baltra. There is an airport there, and it's fairly heavily defended the way we have the scenario set up. There is a Hawk missile battery centered here, just north of the airport. In addition, there are some anti-ship missiles truck-launched on the island. There's a barracks containing, if I recall, about a company of troops. There are also several Vulcan air defense systems, you'll see here, VADS, parked around the island, and some Stinger teams. So, the air base needs to be disabled. But before that can happen, the air defenses need to be disabled. That's going to be the first step. So, we need to take out the search radars, of which there are two. The MPQ-48 here is directly for the Hawk battery. The MPQ-50 is also for the Hawk battery. And the TPS-32 is just kind of a general air search radar. Now, I'm treating this as being all wired together, kind of like a ship would be integrated. And so, in order to totally shut down the Hawk battery, they need to destroy both the MPQ-50 and the TPS-32. That means the Hawk missile cannot use those 3D radars to control their surface-to-air missile engagements. However, under the Harpoon rules, surface-to-air missiles can fire up to 15 nautical miles without a 3D radar. They can do that with just an air search radar. So realistically, if we're going to come in here and do, for example, low-level bombing of this runway, we need to take out all three radars. That's going to be a bit of an issue, but let's get into the specifics of the raid. Part of the problem with running a modern wargame campaign is the insane proliferation of options. There are so many different ways to attempt different things, so many different counterplays to consider, so many different, let's just say, dimensions to the problem. In order to kind of boil that down, what I'm going to do is use dice. I've broken out a few reasonable options for many possible elements of this scenario, and I'm going to use dice to decide between them. We're going to roll live here on camera, and I'll use a pen to mark down our choices, and it's set permanently. The choices may not come out to something that seems perfectly reasonable to us on paper. However, historically, there would be all sorts of other factors. You're just going to have to excuse the furnace. It's a little chilly here tonight. Historically, there would be a host of different factors. Organizational culture, doctrine, training, all of these things that a force may or may not have the flexibility to overcome. We may think, for example, it's silly to go in with, dumb iron bombs to attack a ship that has missiles. Perhaps the dice tell us that that is the only type of attack that one of these sides is able to afford the training for. So, let's get into going down the list and start rolling to flesh out our scenario. And we're going to start at the top with Odontos, the defender. So, I wrote strategy. This should really be more like stance or posture. There's three options here. Remember, there are fast jets stationed on this island runway. That's why we want to take it out. So, option number one, at the time this raid happens, there just so happens to be a combat air patrol, or CAP, in the air. Okay, that'd be pretty neat for the defenders, and if that happens, we'll say they have like half their fuel or half their time on station remaining. Another option is that at the time the raid happens, there are 2 jets sitting on the ramp at alert +5, which means basically as soon as they get the go order, they can be in the air in 5 minutes. Okay, that would not be as great. And finally, I'm going to say there's a chance that their threat posture is so high that they have both jets in the air and jets on the ramp ready to go. I think there are only 6 fast jets on the island, so this would represent a significant commitment of resources, maybe a training exercise, maybe they intercepted some radio chatter or something. But let's find out together what they've got. Okay, so they have 2 jets in the air and jets on the ground, probably fueled, probably not armed. So let's find out which jets are in the air. They have F-16s on the island, and they have F-4s on the island. 2 again. I'll try to keep these more in the center. So we have 2 F-16s in the air, and our F-4s are in the hangar. Now, the island has a radar on it. However, the Galapagos Islands are volcanic in nature, and they have some pretty high ridges and mountains, and there are actually some very large blind spots. And regardless of mountains, the Earth is curved, so a radar here can only see very low targets out to about this range. Now, in our scenario, it has a chance to see very low targets even further due to radar ducting at dawn and dusk. But either way, it's good practice for them to use the destroyer that is stationed at this base as a radar picket. And we have 3 possible locations for it. 92 degrees west, 0 degrees north, which would be, oh, my bad, right here on the equator. 92 degrees west, 1 degree north. And 90 degrees west, 1 degree north. So, here, here, or here. And its air search radar has a range of, I think, 60 miles. So about, something like that. Coverage like so. Okay, so let's go ahead and find out. 1 to 2. So our destroyer is hanging out here, west of the islands, to close out these blind spots caused by the terrain. Seems pretty reasonable. Now finally, we do have 2 recon planes at this airbase. There's an S-3 Viking, and there's an ORV Bronco. And, since there's only 2, I'm saying there's a chance neither of those planes is in the air when the air raid comes in. So, let's roll. Okay, looks like neither of those is in the air. Now, Placata. Let's talk about their strategy. So, this island is a long way from their airbase. It's about 800 nautical miles, 800, 900. When you do the math for various types of ingress and egress, assuming some judicious use of full military power and afterburner, it comes out to about 2,000, 2,300 nautical miles worth of fuel burn. Now, that's a problem because none of their aircraft actually have that much capacity. They're all going to have to tank in the air somewhere. Now, option A, we load our aircraft up with mostly fuel, which means that the tankers can orbit back here in relative safety, but we've filled our aircraft hardpoints with drop tanks, not bombs. The other option, we maximize our strike payload. The tankers come out a little further, but we exchange wing space on our strikers for bombs instead of drop tanks, and we lay more hurt on the island. So I biased this one in favor of the maximum strike payload because I want more decisive action in this campaign. Let's go ahead and roll it. Hey, 6 out of 6. We're going to bring the tankers way down south, and we're going to load our fighters up with bombs. Now, this one has a conditional. Are we going to have a high asset value combat air patrol? 1 to 2 is a yes, 3 to 6 is a no. This would be like a pair of F-14s hanging out with our tankers to keep them safe. Looks like yes. Okay, now what are the rest of our F-14s doing? Well, they're going to come south and sweep the air clear of fighters prior to the strike. Well, they're going to sweep the air clear of fighters. Are we going to bring them in ahead of the strike and give them time to clear the airspace, but perhaps advance warning of the strike? Are we going to try to time it so they cross the radar horizon at the same time as the strike? Or are they going to come in after in order to cover the egress of the strike? Looks like we're going to do it simultaneously. Now that's going to be tricky because they're going to have to come in at a high altitude. But I get ahead of myself. Let's find out. Are they coming in high or low? This, again, has to do with the curvature of the Earth and the radar horizon. High, very fuel efficient, gives them a great advantage in employment of their long-range missiles. Low altitude delays radar detection. That is a 1. So they are going to come in high. Now, the strikers, are they going to ingress from the northwest and take this terrain masking route in past this island? Because I think that gives them, looking at the scale here, if they pop up over this island, it's only about 30 nautical miles to the airport here. So that's a fairly late detection. Or is the strike going to come in from straight north, skimming on the surface of the sea? Let's find out. Looks like they're going to fly the terrain masking route. All right. Let's take a step down. Our strikers are split into 2 types of aircraft. We have A-4 Skyhawks and FA-18 Hornets. The Skyhawks are going to carry anti-radiation missiles, or ARMS, Shrikes, I believe. We've already determined they're going to maximize their payload, so that's 4 Shrikes per aircraft. I've decided those are going to be split between the MPQ-50 radar and the TPS-32 radar, because the early generation Shrikes that we have to be set for a specific radar prior to the aircraft taking off. They cannot retarget in the air. Now, when these Skyhawks come over the horizon, are they going to salvo all their missiles at once? Or are they going to try to hang out in the area and stretch out those Shrikes? Because as soon as the Shrikes go in the air, the defenders are probably going to turn their radars off in order to avoid being targeted, because the Shrike will home in on that radar signal. If we salvo all of them at once, right off the bat, we have the best chance of destroying a radar directly. However, if we loiter and salvo them slowly, then perhaps the defender will keep their radar off for a longer duration of time, giving our Hornets more flexibility. Let's find out which they want to do. All right. 1 big salvo right away. Now the Hornets, are they going to carry walleyes, which are big heavy glide bombs that lock on visually? They have, I believe, an 18 nautical mile range. Or are they going to carry rock-eye cluster munitions? These would require the Hornets to get up close and personal, but would also allow them to absolutely smother the target. Especially, I think, maximum payload for a Hornet is something like 8 rock-eyes. Let's find out. Looks like walleyes. These are standoff munitions, so the Hornet will not be subject to the Vulcan air defense or the Stingers, which is nice. And finally, are the Hornets going to strike and leave, or are they going to hang around and see if they can pick off enemy fighters? Because, if you recall, Hornets have, let's see this time period, they have both Sparrows and Sidewinders. Oh, looks like 1 to 4, they're going to strike and leave. So now we have our basic picture of this raid. The defenders will have a pair of F-16s in the air, and they will have a ship to the west of the islands. The Placatans are going to bring their tankers down, I believe it's 500 nautical miles, and they're going to load up their strike with as many walleyes and shrikes as they can fit. They're going to come in from the northwest. Let's check the map again. They're going to dogleg down here and come in from the northwest and try to sneak into this radar blind spot over here. But the defenders anticipated this, and they have a radar picket ship right there on the ingress path. The ship will give early warning. Perhaps we'll roll at the time to see if they engage the ship. Either way, the strike will probably make their way past this ridge, past this island, into the air defense envelope here. The Skyhawks will salvo all of their anti-radiation missiles at once. At the same time, a bunch of fighters come in high over these islands here. And then while those shrikes are in the air, the Hornets are going to close in on the islands and use their walleyes to pick off targets of opportunity. Priority would be hitting the radars directly or hitting the anti-air missile launchers that will be visible. I'll throw up a picture of a Hawk battery on the screen. They're big things. These are, the size of the launcher when loaded is the size of a semi. You can't exactly hide that super well, especially if you want it ready to use. So they'll try to spot those and pick them off with walleyes, and then they are going to bug out directly to the north. Now I'm going to take some time, get all the paperwork together, get the stats ready, and next video we are going to run this and see how it shakes out. I'm going to try to do a little bit of Harpoon live on camera, see exactly how slowly that plays, but I think I can keep it pretty speedy. So that's all for this video. Thank you guys very much for sitting down with me to figure this out. I'm very excited to run this scenario, and next time we'll figure out how it plays. Until then, happy gaming.